All right, so get this. Today we're diving deep, right into the heart of the U.S.-Mexico border.
Yeah. Okay.
Everyone's curious about this place, all the headlines, the history. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
For sure, and we're not just skimming the surface here. We're going all the way back to its roots.
Right back to the beginning.
Exactly. We're going to trace how it all began, how it's evolved, and what makes it such a fascinating, albeit complex zone today.
We've got our work cut out for us.
We do. We've got a stack of excerpts from Wikipedia about the border ready to dig in. So are you ready to get started?
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
Yeah.
It's funny how we see a line on a map.
Right. Just a line.
Exactly. But that line, it holds so much history.
Yeah.
What we think of as the U.S.-Mexico border, it actually started way further east, like way east. You might be surprised.
Okay, now you've got me curious. What was it like back then? Paint me a picture.
All right, so picture this, 1819. The ink is drying on this treaty, the Adams-Onis Treaty.
Okay, the Adams-Onis Treaty. Got it.
And this treaty, it sets the border at the Sabine River.
The Sabine River.
That's right, the Sabine River.
Yeah.
Flows through present-day Texas and Louisiana. It's wild. Right?
Hold on. So you're telling me Texas was part of Mexico?
Oh, yeah, once upon a time. And the border, hundreds of miles east of where it sits now.
Wow, that's a serious plot twist. Okay, so how did it move? What shifted the border to where it is today?
Well, that's where things get interesting. The Mexican-American War, that's the big turning point. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848, that's the one that redrew the map, like big time.
Redrew it how? Like what changed?
We're talking a massive land transfer. Huge. Mexico, they ceded California, Nevada, Utah, most of Arizona, and even chunks of New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, all to the U.S. It's mind-blowing.
That's incredible. Like the entire West just redrawn all at once.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's how the border, the one we know today, started to take shape.
Wow. But it doesn't end there, does it? There's more to the story.
Oh, absolutely. Fast forward just a few years, 1853, the Gadsden Purchase. This one's a bit smaller, but still a big deal. It added a chunk of land to the U.S., mostly in southern Arizona and New Mexico.
Wait, Arizona and New Mexico as we know them.
Yep, those iconic Arizona landscapes, some of that came from this very land deal. The Gadsden Purchase, that was the final piece of the puzzle, shaped the border we know today.
Hold on, 1853. That wasn't that long ago. It really puts things into perspective.
Right. It's recent history, all things considered. And those decisions, they still echo today, shaping the border issues we see now.
Totally. Okay, so let's fast forward then to the modern border. When we look at it on a map now, it's huge, right? It's not just a line.
It's massive. This border stretches a whopping 1,954 miles. To put that into perspective, imagine driving from New York City all the way to Los Angeles.
That's a long drive.
And it's still shorter than the U.S.-Mexico border. And along that drive, you'd see it all. Bustling cities, think San Diego and Tijuana, right next to each other, and then vast, desolate deserts. It's a border of stark contrasts.
Quite the road trip. I was reading about the Rio Grande and the Colorado River, these natural borders between the U.S. and Mexico.
Yeah, super big ones.
What's their role in all of this? I mean, they're not just lines on a map, right?
Absolutely not. The Rio Grande, the Colorado River, they're more than just boundaries. They hold so much. Ecological significance, cultural weight. They've shaped lives and traditions for centuries for the people living along them.
It's easy to get caught up in all the politics and forget that this border, it's about people.
Real people, real lives.
Their stories, their struggles, their cultures, it's all right there. Which brings us to the current challenges, the issues surrounding the U.S.-Mexico border. It's a sensitive topic, to say the least.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to be mindful, approach it with nuance.
Exactly. How do we even begin to unpack something as layered and complex as border security and immigration?
Well, for starters, we acknowledge the complexity. We can't shy away from that.
Right, it's not about taking sides.
Not at all. Our sources offer a lot of different perspectives, a variety of viewpoints. It's about presenting a balanced understanding.
I like that. Balanced, neutral, that's key. It's not just about immigration either, right? The economics of it all. The U.S.-Mexico border, it's a huge deal.
Oh, absolutely. Think about the sheer volume of trade happening every single day. Every single day. It's a driving force in both economies.
It's a two-way street, for sure.
100%. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars in goods traded annually. That's what our sources tell us. But it's more than just numbers, right?
It always is. What about the human side of it?
Exactly. It's about the people living in these communities, the everyday realities, the challenges they face, and the culture. Wow, the cultural exchange is amazing.
It's like this incredible blend, right? Two cultures coming together, creating something new.
Exactly. It's like Tex-Mex cuisine.
Oh, perfect example. Who doesn't love Tex-Mex?
Right. Tex-Mex, it's a perfect illustration of how the border isn't just a dividing line, it's where cultures mix, creating something delicious and new.
You know what? That's a great way to put it. It's a reminder that beyond all the politics and headlines, there's a human story.
A story worth hearing.
Welcome back. As we're diving into this whole US-Mexico border thing, it's easy to get lost in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, the sheer scale of it.
Exactly. Thousands of miles, centuries of history, it's a lot. But we got to remember the people,
The heart of it all.
Right, the folks who call this borderland home. It's their stories that matter. We were talking about that human element earlier, and I think that's where things get really interesting.
It's true, you can get lost in the treaties and the trade figures.
All the big picture stuff.
Yeah, but meanwhile, daily life is happening right there on the border in a way most of us can't even imagine.
Absolutely. It's like these border towns, they're almost like a world unto themselves, right?
They're living, breathing proof of how complex this border really is.
Exactly. It's like they exist in two worlds at once. On one side, you've got these historical ties, cultural connections. They don't care about lines on a map.
We go way back, way deeper than that.
Exactly. And then on the other side, you've got the modern reality, the border security, the fences, the checkpoints.
It's like this constant push and pull.
Did our sources mention how these communities, how they navigate that?
It's amazing, actually. What's fascinating is how interwoven these border communities are. Think about it. Families, businesses, even traditions, they all flow back and forth.
Like it's not.
Right, as if the border's barely even there. And then you've got these increased security measures, the fences, the checkpoints, and it disrupts everything.
It's like this tension, right? This constant back and forth.
Exactly.
You've got the economic reality, the need for cross-border trade, people need to work, right? And then the human side, the desire to connect with family, with heritage.
And then you layer on top of that the politics, the pressure to control the flow of people and goods. It's a lot for these communities to deal with.
It really challenges our whole idea of what a border even is, It makes you wonder, are there really just lines on a map?
Right. Or are they something more, something fluid, something that changes?
Something we can't fully control. And the U.S.-Mexico border, with all its history and baggage, it really forces us to confront that question.
Because at the end of the day, it's not about lines on a map. It's about the human experience. That's what gives it meaning.
And speaking of human experience, one thing that struck me from our research is the cultural blend. It's incredible.
So amazing, right?
Like this whole other culture emerges from that space, drawing on both American and Mexican influences, but it's something totally new.
It's its own thing, definitely. You see it everywhere. The language, the music, the art, the food, of course.
We already talked about Tex-Mex, but
Right. But there's so much more.
it's everywhere. And it really highlights how the border isn't just about division, it's a place where amazing things happen, where cultures collide and create something new and vibrant and exciting.
It's like this beautiful mess in a way.
It really is. It's like it's saying, yeah, okay, we might be two separate countries on paper, but down here, it's different. We share the space, the story, and it's more interesting because of it.
I love that. And it just emphasizes the importance of looking deeper, going beyond the political rhetoric, and really engaging with the human side of the border.
Yeah.
These are real people with real lives and real stories.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about history, we've talked about culture, the human element, but there's another big piece of this puzzle, right? The economics of the U.S.-Mexico border. And something tells me it's more than just dollars and cents. You got that right. It's way more than just the bottom line. I mean, we've covered so much ground already. The history, the culture, the people, it's a lot to process.
It really is.
Yeah.
But when you zoom out, when you look at the bigger picture, the U.S.-Mexico border, it's like this crash course in global economics.
How so?
It shows us just how interconnected we are, the U.S. and Mexico. We're not just neighbors, we're vital economic partners. Think about it. Supply chains, manufacturing, labor markets, it all flows back and forth constantly.
It's like, what's that word? Symbiosis?
Yeah.
Like in biology where two different organisms, they seem separate, but they need each other to survive.
Exactly. That's a great comparison. Except here, those organisms, they're two of the biggest economies in the world.
Right. So Mexico, they're sending all these goods to the U.S.
Right.
also.
Tons. Everything from food to cars, you name it.
And we're their biggest customer.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And we're also a huge source of investment for them.
So it's a two-way street, economically speaking. Both countries benefit.
Absolutely. So then the question becomes, What happens when you start messing with that balance?
Right, when things change.
Because any decision made about the border, on either side, it has a ripple effect.
Mm.
It's not just about immigration. It impacts businesses, workers, even everyday consumers on both sides.
It's like this delicate balancing act.
Exactly. Security concerns, economic growth, human rights, it all has to be weighed.
It's complicated, that's for sure.
No easy answers. But what's clear is this. The U.S.-Mexico border, it's more than just a physical line in the sand.
It's way more than that.
It's a dynamic region, constantly evolving, shaping, and being shaped by the millions of people who live and work there.
And it connects us in ways we don't even realize.
Absolutely. And that economic connection, it's a major part of the story. You can't talk about the U.S.-Mexico border without talking about the economy.
Well said. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the U.S.-Mexico border. It's been quite a journey.
They really have.
We've covered so much ground, from the historical roots to the modern realities, the cultural tapestry, the economic engine. It's a lot to digest.
A lot to think about for sure.
And we hope for you, our listener, that this deep dive has given you a better understanding of this complex and fascinating region. It's a place that challenges our assumptions, makes us question what we thought we knew.
And hopefully spark some curiosity.
Exactly. Because there's always more to learn, more to explore. So as we wrap up, we'll leave you with this.
Huh?
The U.S.-Mexico border, it's often painted as a point of division, a source of conflict.
Which it can be, at times.
Of course. But it can also be a place of opportunity, a catalyst for collaboration. The question is, how can we use that shared history, that vibrant culture, that economic interdependence to build a better future?
A future that benefits everyone, on both sides of the border.
Exactly. It's a question worth pondering. And on that note, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the U.S.-Mexico border. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive, where we'll tackle a whole new set of fascinating topics.